Tonight, corruption in American journalism. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. The Department of Homeland Security said last week that it is very likely Russian hackers targeted Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta. Mr. Podesta is an almost fanatical party enforcer for the Democrats. He has long been a confidant of Secretary Clinton. Talking Points believes that if the intel is correct, then Russian hackers working for Putin did indeed intrude on the American election. President Obama must take action. First, he must speak directly to the American people about the evidence, and second, he must apply sanctions against the Putin government. These cyber attacks are just that, attacks. So let's get on it, Mr. President. Now for the fallout. By hacking into Podesta's email, we know, beyond any doubt, that the American press is corrupt, at least to some extent. For example, New York Times political reporter Mark Leibovich appears to have given Hillary Clinton's spokesperson, Jennifer Palmieri, editorial control over a major news story in the Times. The reporter asked Ms. Palmieri if he could use certain quotes that Hillary Clinton gave him in a private off-the-record meeting. That's against journalistic procedure. You don't write a political article okayed by a campaign. Another example, working for CNN at the time, now Democratic Chairwoman Donna Brazile, apparently fed the Clinton campaign a question that CNN was going to ask during a town hall meeting featuring Mrs. Clinton. Again, that's corruption. That should never happen. Example 3, John Harwood. He's a Washington correspondent for CNBC, and you'll remember him as a former debate moderator in the Republican primary. According to hacked emails, he was emailing Podesta, suggesting things Hillary Clinton could do to become more successful. That's outrageous. Example 4. New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman, then working at Politico, was described by the Clinton campaign in emails as, quote, a friendly journalist who teed up stories and never disappointed them. To be fair, that's hearsay. Haberman did not do what Mr. Leibovich did, directly interacting with the Clinton campaign, as far as we know. So the email might be unfair to her, although it's troubling. Also, another hearsay situation, a report today out of TMZ says that NBC had that Access Hollywood tape for months and purposely released it to damage Trump before the debate. Anonymous sources, so impossible to verify. Finally, the talk show host Steve Harvey provided Hillary Clinton's campaign with the exact questions he was going to ask Secretary Clinton.
She's been breaking ground in her personal and professional life since she was a kid. So let's go back to when you were just a kid.
Oh boy. Oh my goodness.
You wanted to be an astronaut.
I did.
Mrs. Clinton knew exactly that was coming, including the use of her picture as a child. Talking Points has long asserted that the American press is essentially an arm of the left. This proves it. There's no doubt. So let's sum up. Any journalist colluding with a political campaign should resign immediately, be forced to resign. Period. And that's the memo. Now for the top story reaction, joining us from Hartford, Connecticut, Richard Hanley teaches journalism at Quinnipiac University. Here in New York City, Merrill Brown teaches media at Montclair State University in New Jersey. Your reaction, Professor Brown?
Well, I think we have to rank these things. Obviously, we can't condemn Haberman for being liked. We don't have any evidence she did anything even questionable. In the case of Harwood, though, I'm an ex-reporter, and you know yourself, Bill, you would be very uncomfortable giving advice to a campaign person or to any aide in any organizational situation. Journalists don't do that. I'm disappointed in Harwood, and that, to me, is the one that really stands out.
I think, Professor Hanley, that the New York Times, though, Leibovich is a big-time political reporter, perhaps their main guy. And it's a complicated situation, to be fair to this man. He went up to Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, and he sat down with Hillary Clinton off the record, and he had a long chat with her. Okay, and that's all right. I mean, right, so far he's okay, off-the-record chats. We do it all the time. But then he wants to use certain things out of that thing, so he runs it by the Clinton people. Well, can I use it? Number one, you shouldn't use anything off the record, okay? And number two, you know, permission? Come on, it's outrageous. And the New York Times trying to justify it, by the way.
Bill, what Leibovich did is against journalistic principles. You should never have a subject of your work, decide what that work will contain, particularly a candidate for president. So I think that's not quite at a level where should he be fired. I don't know if I can say that, but it certainly is not a good practice, and it certainly is something that makes me
So if you're the editor of the New York Times, and I'm not trying to get anybody fired, but if you're the editor of the New York Times and your top political gun has been exposed in a secret email as having a deal with the Clinton administration, the Clinton campaign, you don't take any action?
I would take action, and I would perhaps think of pulling him off the beat, because what you've basically done, is set the groundwork with the Clinton campaign at this point, and perhaps the presidency in January begin to dictate terms of what you can and cannot cover, what you can and cannot say.
So you would pull him off.
That's
what would you do?
Well, Bill, put yourself in Leibowitz's shoes and think about what it was like to cover Hillary Clinton at that point in time. She was utterly inaccessible. She did very little on television. He's got to get to her. He's commissioned with an article. He takes an off-the-record meeting. He sees some good stuff in that off-the-record meeting. He tries to get it because she's really hard to pin down now, and even worse then. I think he did the best he could to try to get something out of a candidate for the presidency.
I disagree 100%. You cannot let your readers feel that this is a upfront interview and then make a backroom deal with her spokeswoman, not a spokeswoman, she's a campaign big shot. The way I would have handled it, though, is that I'd take the off-the-record meeting with Mrs. Clinton, okay? And then I would say to her, okay, look, I'm going to do an article. I'm not going to quote you, but I'm going to paraphrase your positions. And then I'm going to tell the reader that I am doing that. Wouldn't that be a better way?
That would absolutely be a better way.
That's the way you do journalism.
There are two choices there. We don't know what he would have done if they had said no. He might have done what you suggested.
But you can't do that because it's subterfuge. Trump, Mr. Haley, said last night on this program that he's seen more piling on than any time in U.S. history. And I agree with him. I think this is the worst covered presidential race in American history, and I'm pretty good on this kind of stuff. I've never seen anything like this, the unbalance of the coverage. Am I wrong?
Well, Trump has certainly cultivated the ground for this coverage, by his remarks, his tweets,
that's
and
true,
being constantly in front of the news cycle.
But that's not an excuse for journalistic people to go after him harder than Mrs. Clinton, who certainly has her own problems.
Well, in this case, she is controlling the access, and as Professor Brown points out, access is all in covering politics.
No, it's not. I cover it every day, and I don't have access to her.
Well,
she said she'd come over here, but she hasn't. But I can cover her. I can cover her through other people on the campaign. I can cover her through our reporters. I mean, come on. You don't have to give in to this kind of stuff.
Well, that's what I mean. That because reporters want access, they're more likely than not to try to get on the good side of a candidate.
I think this is the case in the New York Times. You can butter them up if you want. All right, I don't do it, but you can, and I don't mind that. But not in print. You've got to be honest in print. Now, I know I'm going to get letters that say certain people on the Fox News channel cozy up to Trump, okay? But they're not reporters, all right? They're in the morning people, or whatever, okay? And they have a perfect right as commentators or whatever they want to do. If you're a commentator, you can cozy up to anybody. You can do whatever you want. It's not the same standard. We're talking about hard news reporting here, and that's what's really troubling.
Well, there are many things to be troubled about. I would also make the argument that coverage of Trump has been belated, which is one of the reasons it feels so much, from your point of view, like it's piling up. We didn't read about his business practices and his tax situation until well into the campaign, in fact, after the convention. And I think we might have had a slightly different dynamic around the convention had we read more of this stuff beforehand.
Maybe, but that again is the responsibility of the hard news press to dig that out. And it's not easy to dig it out because Trump doesn't want his tax returns out.
Well, there's an enormous amount of public record stuff about his businesses and what he's done historically that should have been part of the primary discussion and not just the general election discussion.
Good debate, guys. I appreciate it. We'll have more about the WikiLeaks hacking with Martha McCallum a bit later on. Next on the Right Now, Governor Mike Pence running hard with Donald Trump. He will be here. Then, later, Miller talking more politics. What could go wrong? Up ahead.